Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Today, my presentation about operating system. Myself, Abdullah Arijo, roll number 2K70, LCS 49. Submitted to Asif Ali Jamali. Course outline. Introduction to operating system. What is DeadLock? Processor scheduling. What is process? Inter-process communication. Operating system. It is a collection of operating programs that provide an interface for the user to interact with the computer. An OS is a program that controls the execution of application programs and acts as an interface between applications and computer. Objectives of OS. An OS makes a computer more convenient to use, means we can use computer through OS is a friendly manner and can use multiple things at a time. If you can see, an OS that allows the computer system resource to use in a efficient manners manner. It is not the OS itself, but the hardware that make all kind of services possible and available to application program. An OS an OS merely exports the hardware to provide easily accessible interface, ability to evolve to better understand the requirements for an operating system. It is useful to consider how operating systems have evolved over the year. Deadlock. Deadlock is a problem. It is a situation or condition when two or more processes sharing the same resource are effectively preventing each other from accessing the resource that is called deadlock. Condition for deadlock. Mutual exclusion not shareable. Only one process can use resource at a time. Hold and wait. Holding one resource and waiting for another to come. Then deadlock may occur. No preparation. A resource can be released voluntarily by process itself. Circular wait. Each process must be waiting for a resource which is being held by another process, which is waiting for the first process to release the resource. Processor scheduling. It is a change of ready state to running state of the process. CPU scheduler selects a process among the processes that are ready to execute and allocates CPU to one of them. Short-term scheduler, also known as dispatchers, make the decision of which process to make execute next. Scheduling level. Long-term scheduling is done when a new process is created. It entities, processes, and so controls the degree of multi-programming. Number of processes in memory. Medium term scheduling involves suspending or resuming process by sweeping rolling them out of into memory. Short term process or CPU scheduling occurs most frequently and decided which process to execute next. What is process? An execution of process program is called process. It is an active entity and contain program code as well as current informal for executing the program like it has program counter which store address of next instruction and it has a stock CPU register data section. Diagram. Here is a diagram you can see admit interput exit event completion or event wait. New the process is created. Ready process are ready for execution by CPU. Running institution is executing. Waiting process is waiting for IO for or for an event to occur. Terminated process is finished. Inter-process communication IPC. A process can be two types: independent process, cooperating process. An independent process is not affected by execution of the process while a cooperating process can be affected by other executing processes. Though one can think that those processes which are running independently will execute very efficiently. In reality, there are many situations when cooperative nature can be utilized for increasing computational speed, convenience, and modularity. Inter-process communication (IPC) is a mechanism which allows process to communicate with each other and synchronize their action. The communication between these processes can be seen as a method of cooperation between them. Process can communicate with each other through both shared memory, message passing. Inter-process communication (IPC). An operating system can implement both methods of communication. First, we decide the shared memory method of communication. Then, messaging passing communication between process. Using shared memory require process to share some variable, and it is completely depends on how program will implement it. One way of communication using shared memory can be imaged like this. Suppose process 1 and process 2 are executing simultaneously and they share some resources or use some information from another process. Process 1 generate information about certain computation or resource being used to keep it a record in shared memory. When process 2 need to use the share information, it will check in the record storage in shared memory and take note of the information generated by process 1 and yet accordingly process can use shared memory for extraction information as a record from another process as well for delivering a specific information to other process. Let's decide an example of communication between process using shared memory method. Inter-process communication IPC. One shared memory method. Example: producer consumer problem. There are two processes, producer and consumer. Producer produce some item and consumer consumes that item. The two processes share a common space or memory location known as the buffer, where the item produced by producer is stored and from which the consumer consumes the item if needed. There are two versions of the problem. The first one is known as unbounded buffer problem, in which producer can keep on producing items and there is no limit on the size of the buffer. The second one is known as bounded buffer problem, in which producer can produce up to a certain number of items before it starts, waiting for consumer to consume it. We will discuss the bounded buffer problem. First, the producer and the consumer will share some common memory. Then producer will start producing items. If the total produced item is equal to size of buffer, producer will wait to get it consumed by the consumer. Similarly, the consumer will first check for availability of the item. If no item is available, consumer will wait for producer to produce it. If there are item available, consumer will consume it. Inter-process communication IPC. Number 2, messaging passing method. Now we will start our decision of the communication between processing VI message passing in the word in the in this method process communicate with each other without using any kind of shared memory. If two processes part 1 and part 2 want to communicate with each other, they proceed as follows. Establish an communication link. If a link already exists, no need establish it again. Start exchanging messages using basic primitive. We need at least two primitives. Send message destination or send message. Received message host or receive messages. Thank you. Here is my presentation is over.